So welcome everyone. Good morning. This is Ramola D Reports. I'm Ramola D, and I'm here this morning with a very distinguished guest, and I'm so pleased and honored to make his acquaintance and actually to come to the point of actually having this conversation because we've had a lot of trouble this morning just making this connection. We are speaking across time and space over here, and I'm very grateful to Russell J. Gould, Postmaster General of our world, federal postal judge, to make the time to be here. So good morning or good evening, Russell, where you are. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you and your audience for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Russell, as you know, you are somebody who I think holds the key to a lot of the missing information that we have currently as we look at current events and what's going on in the world today. So that really is one of the main reasons I'm hoping we can have a conversation with you so you can inform all of us as to what you think is really going on and from your perspective. And perhaps we should also talk a little bit about, what your perspective is and what gives you that perspective first before we move forward.
Sure. Well, I had a corporate partner for years. We had a corporate shareholders meetings, and I had a partner for about 18 years, and my partner's name was David-Wynn Miller. Him and I went on a hiatus around the world figuring out the mechanics of what makes contract move from point A to point B, be it from birth certificates to driver's licenses, to bank contracts, to stock market contracts, to insurance, and all the things that fundamentally set up our day-to-day accoutrements of our lifestyle. And in that, we found linguistic problems, we found mechanical wrongs, we timed bankruptcies, and it was quite a partnership we had. David-Wynn Miller and myself, it was rough and tumbly as all partnerships are. I try to remember the wonderful good things and try to keep out the bad things because David and I contracted different. What that means is he gave certain technologies to certain banking families, and in return they gave him safety and different. They were a little bit kinder to him. Whereas in my plight, I learned in the middle of the courtroom, learned in the middle of the banks, the military, and the different journeys that my plights took me to, and became a master of learning what I don't know and humbly what I learned. And it's been a very humble journey. It's not been easy. There's been many sacrifices. First of all, we started out with 3 shareholders in the quantum banking system and the quantum grammar and the global postal construct that we set up. One of the shareholders had to stand down because he lived to the terms of our shareholders' meetings. The other partner, of course, was David-Wynn Miller, and he lived to them until he couldn't, and then he breached them, and that was all documented through the U.S. judicial system. And some of the court ventures that him and I were on. But I love him. I don't want to bash him. He did bring us blessings to the world as far as the math interface to grammar, where we can go in and out of all languages in the world and lose no deviation in our sentence structure. But I brought the quantum and the now space aspect, and we became partners back in 1998. And from there, we had a friendship. It was highs and lows, as you can imagine partnerships go. He passed. When he passed, I held a shareholders meeting that most can watch on YouTube on Reno-seminar-1. And that will give you kind of the shareholders meetings. Right now, I'm the last man standing, so to speak, and I have to comply with the terms of our shareholders' constructs and policies. And so I manage and steward those. And those are on a global level, dealing with global banking and grammar and banking, as well as fee for freight for postage, on military and cargoes as they move, setting up wharfs and port and bills of the ladings on a global level. So that's kind of my background with David and with my other partner who's no longer there. There is no other shareholders within the quantum banking system or the Global Postal Union or the Federal Postal Court. There's a lot of people out there saying things, but I have contract and I live to the terms of those contracts with David and with the former partner as well. So it's a humbling road. I've been basically through the hazement of learning of what not to do to figure out what to do. There's a tremendous amount of sacrifice, and to this day, I'm still making sacrifices as well as bringing solutions, both financially and spiritually to myself, of course, because the easiest person is to fool is yourself. So you have to look in the mirror, see if you want to open up the door, and you can't unlearn people once you educate them. Fortunately for me, there's so many people plagiarizing the quantum banking system that I only gave them part of the story, which is my surety that all these people that were trying to kick off quantum banking and all the concepts of the functions that I started in 2001, we see some of the after effects of the crypto hyphen currencies. Those were my copyrights and patents in 2003. Of course, you had the people afterwards, after ex post facto, after the fact, coming in and saying, oh, we got crypto and digital currencies and blockchain, and that's all a copyright infringement, but they're using adverb, verb, adjective, pronoun scenarios, creating no facts. So as they babble saying nothing in the cryptocurrencies as an adjective pronoun, the facts have already been set for the establishment of the correctness to give people a security to enter into the quantum hyphen banking system with the quantum hyphen grammar. So it's been a humbling road, watching a lot of plagiarism, watching a lot of nefarious people out there making their own journeys, their own plots, their own hold on to things that they think they can hold that don't say anything and think it's really, really important, and then bash and keep society and basically the moral values of society blurred, so we cannot ever figure out what correctness looks like. If you were to happen to stumble across it, it would look kind of like the Wizard of Oz to you, something that is just smoke and mirrors because you've never seen a performance, you've never seen correctness, and when you do see it, would you be smart enough to comprehend that what you've seen? Due to the programming and the social engineering done by our lovely CIA here in our Hollywood. Now, you think about Hollywood, a holly tree and the blossoms that come from that. That was a tree, and I love plant medicine. Don't get me wrong, and I'm for the solemn journeys of that plant medicine. But the holly tree itself was a spell that the Druid priests used to use to change the condition of thinking of the society that they were trying to implement their thoughts or their psychological warfare on. So you have to go back. That's why we have Hollywood. That's where that all comes from. So you have to kind of keep that all in perspective of the social engineering. And I can't be mad at it because I'm also a part in it. And so I can only be humble to myself and be factual to myself and bring solutions in the banking world for the planet as I watch everybody infight and act like they're actually doing something. It's very comical here in the United States. The United States ceased to exist in 1999. That's where David and I got the copyrights to the Title IV 1-to-1.9 dimension flag. And in that journey, I ended up becoming Chief Judge of the United States, taking down the U.S. Supreme Court on October 4th, 2004, becoming Chief Judge. In that plight, David and I had registered peace treaties, disqualifications of presidential elections with the Secretary of the Navy's office back on February 20th of 2003. And we established peace treaties with the Title IV 1-to-1.9 dimension flag, which we are the copyright owners of. And when David died, I held a shareholders meeting and basically we set up a living will or a living trust, so to speak, for the terms of those who interact with our quantum banking system, our quantum postal system, our quantum federal postal hyphen courts, and all the functions there and the guidelines. And so there's a lot of people out there, sadly, wrong leading the people, because a lot of these people that you can't sell judgeships. It's not how it works, right? Judgeships are earned. It's a lot of hard work, and it's a very humbling journey. And very few that I know have ever humbled themselves to learn the secrets and to take their beating, so to speak, and be be a find out piece of metal, so to speak, when they come out of the battles.
It's
And
an
so
experiential journey, is what you're suggesting.
absolutely, yeah, for sure. Sorry, yes, for sure. The the journey. Everybody has their own capacities, but knowledge gives people and courage. I hope that people see my story and what I've been through as a point of courage for society, to learn that we can get along through communication, that learning the correct communication, parsing, syntax, grammar, and the quantum mechanics of the quantum grammar system brings a sense of accountability to yourself, gives you a chance to self-govern yourself in more of an autonomy sort of state, and it's a kind of a double-edged sword. If you're a bad person and you're telling lies in quantum grammar, well, you don't want the prepositional phrase grammar, the preset facts, to put your condition of mind on trial when you actually run in front of someone who's mastered and quite skilled at this. There are very few people, far and few between, because of the people's lack of being in the fights for themselves.
You know,
Very
this
easy to fight.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Russell, but honestly, you've given us such a wonderful gist of your journey, David Windmiller's journey, and the sort of the quantum banking system construct and the global postal construct and where you are right now. So we could take this conversation a few different directions, but perhaps since you're talking about it, we could talk about quantum grammar itself, which David Windmiller came up with and which you have also developed, I understand. So, what exactly is it? Why does it relate to the banking contracts of the world? And is it something that offers? You say it offers accountability. Does it therefore replace the current language of contract law that banks have used prior to this and that have permitted them to engage in massive fraud against the people?
There's a multifaceted answer to that. So
I
if you
bet.
will, let me go back to the first question that you had. And the first question you had is, how does the grammar affect or create consequence on banking? Well, there's a number of ways to look at that. Number one is how you contract with your bank. How we do that is through what's called SHIPS papers, or our credentialing to get us to come into the bank. And that is done through the Department of Transportation for each country. The Department of Transportation for each country gets its authorization from that country's postal construct, and then that country's postal construct is under the Universal Postal Union, which I disqualified in 2001 and became Postmaster General of. On June 18th, 2003, I had a physical meeting in Bern, Switzerland, with the top postal people in the world about the mechanical system that I had set up in quantum mechanics for cargo movement of contracts from point A to point B. And so I became a walking trust of performance within the trust of the postal construct of planet Earth. Planet Earth itself and the concept of banking is about security. It's about being confident that the value that you position within that bank is functional, that you get to be engaged in participation, and then they can act as a custodian, so to speak, of household goods to give lines of the value, transfer your wishes or your needs. But unfortunately, because of the grammar that we've been using within our constructs of the banks, we go into the bank and do a deposit. They have you do a deposit right out the chute. But the prefix DE means to separate from, so you move yourself from your position, your positive, your values. Then the bank turns around and hands you a receipt, but the prefix RE means no, it's a particle of negation. So now they've given you nothing back. So you've left your position and you have no proof of it because they gave you no proof that you left it there. And so they've used these word games and the zeros, and with the quantum banking system that I've set up, that there's tangible value for each paper or coin that you posit or position within the bank. Now, the way I had set it up originally was for a digital hyphen currencies. And I am also comptroller of the global currencies, and I know those mechanics of what that means, right? And how that used. And there are a number of treaties that have been positioned globally to obstruct people's capacity to control their contract or their positioning, be it through wars of controlling time or controlling regions or locations, theaters, or the control of the actual goods itself, because the banks are like, that's our money, the central banking systems, and you can keep what you can hold. And then they have a lot of guns and clubs to come in and take whatever they want as theirs. So you have to comprehend that the foundation of banking also is a feudal venture. And so upon that, we're not here to create, the quantum grammar brings accountability, but there's different theaters for different specifics. Specifics being consequences of people's choices, being either in society, pharmaceutical, communications, via wire, electronics, and some of the nefarious means that are being used against us. So we have to analyze that. And I spoke out against the 5G, of course, in about 2 years ago on the Winifred Adams Show, Voice of America, basically giving closure that my partner at the time, David Eiffel and Colin Miller, had wrote copyrights for quantum transducers to program subspace using what would be ultrasonic means or electronic means. And the U.S. military has been studying that for a long time. We can go back as late as the 60s and see what they did in studies by the CIA and the U.S. military with LSD and using electronics on some of the people that they were searching and learning how to do things on. And don't think that they don't know that this 5G and these weapons that they have cannot be engineered and used either through megahertz or kilohertz to pulsate and stimulate the mind. Society would be very much fooling themselves to think that they are not trained in this.
They're already doing it.
They're already doing it. The very first forms of study of this can be characterized in fact as far as back as 1875, and you would have to go into your Tavistock Society paperwork to dig all that up for your people that search it. Yeah, you guys, most people are hip to this in my world. They comprehend the massive social engineering that has happened, and it's unfortunate because the lines are so blurred because there's been so much compartmentalization, combining on a macro, what we call a quanta, a big pluralism to accept all these things, that we've really lost focus as to have moral values behind that what we do. The quantum grammar of communications allows us to pre-position, set the facts of the performance so that we can look at the condition of mind on why the performance was created. And so that brings a sense of accountability between customer and banker or court system and claimants and liables within the construct of the usury of the contract on the contract.
So it would be very useful to sort of institute in society, in our world today, if we wanted to create a brand new society, with an accountable banking system, with accountable judicial system, the quantum grammar construct would be a very useful substrate or base on which to base all of this on, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, we can go in and I can literally go in and out of all languages in the world and take sentence structure frontwards and backwards and lose no deviation in my sentence construct. The value of that for global trade, for global business, for small-time business, puts the layman at a level playing field as he moves the tariffs through the ports. Now, please comprehend, tariffs and ports are my specialty because I control them worldwide in the now space. So these are what I set up for free venture capitalists to basically create a bingo effect to control their free space of people's worlds around them, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. So now, does that mean, however, that there are people you are working with who have accepted the quantum banking system and the quantum grammar construct and are working with you to create new forms of accountable contracts?
There are specific people that have used the quantum grammar mechanics. Unfortunately, there's more bad people using it to non-perform against the people that are unknowing and unsuspecting. And that's the real thing that I wrestle against. Is I see some of the things that my partner David did and the people he was working with, and they were basically pretty much laughing at the lower, unfortunately, a tier system where you have all these entities with all these with everything, and then
The
you have the people
Rothschilds?
well, I'm not going to point names because until
He
I meet
has,
the
he's
people.
named them.
Yeah, he met with them. Yes, he did in Ireland. I chose not to be on those contracts. I made choices, and I chose not to work with the Clintons. I had my own spiritual cognition to myself, and I was going to knock. I'm not going to cross those boundaries for my fellow mankind. And I would hope that if somebody was in a position as me for planet Earth, that righteously they would make a decision that maybe is difficult at the time, but is looking at more the long-term consequences of that choice. I myself, because all the money on planet Earth was written in fiction until I came out with my own money, I am the first guy and only guy with the knowledge on how to change out currencies correct. There are many people with high educations, and I value their educations. But when you know who I am and know what I've done, and I'm speaking mainly to the top people in the world that have sat down with me, sat across the table, given me closure about their constructs. I gave them closure about my constructs, and they have not paid toll for freight, so to haven their accoutrements of their banking worlds into my now space. So I'll just stay in the now space. We'll let the fiction, like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and all these different entities, we'll let them stay in the past, and we'll let them stay in the future. The good part about that is they're never there now.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you're holding the now space for everybody.
We're holding the now space for the people so the people can learn how to join the constructs. Unfortunately, there are a lot of bad teachers out there because they didn't build the system. So they're making presumptions on what David and I had built, and David lacked the authorization because he lost certain credentialing through his choices. And don't think the U.S. judicial system, the World Court at The Hague, International Bank of Settlements, don't think those judges don't know who that person is. You can count on it. You're talking to them. They know, and I know that they know. So I'm not angry. I'm just waiting for the citizens to figure it out, how to join with the constructs. I'm waiting for countries to step forward and bring me into location to set up the financial stability for the peoples of the world. The people of the world have no reason to fear. Like I said, sacrifices have been made. Tremendous sacrifices, both mentally and spiritually, to get me through this journey. And so, as fate may have it, or my destiny would have it, things are given to me as I need them to help and mankind in the best way that I can, to care, to give full closure, to give people a glimpse into my world periodically, because the world, is not really ready for me. What I mean by that is I just got done writing the White House and put them on a 3, 5, and 10, tendering gold to backstop the American citizens forever. They've made choices not to take that. So if they crash the economy and they try to set up a quantum hyphen system, and I'm not sitting there, I know that this is fake news. See, it goes both ways. The new people that are in there are kind of Johnny-come-latelys, kind of really late to the party, right? Just in here in the United States. It's unfortunate that they got caught up. At least they knew it was bad. They just didn't have any tools. I got the flag. I got the post office. I've got the banking. I've got the courts. And what do they have?
Are there any people in the current U.S. government construct who fully recognize what you are doing?
Yes, I went to the U.S. Supreme Court in mid-December this year. When I walked in the doors, I walked to the Archives Department in the back end of the U.S. Supreme Court, gave them my name, Russell-J. Gould. They punched me up in the records. They could not find me in the records. They sent me to the clerk's office. When I walked in the clerk's office, as I'm chief, I told them there was 2 people sitting behind 2 clerks. They had a spear on top of the flag because they're at war with the people. When you read your Army regulations, 840-10, 2.1 through 2.10, you'll learn about order of precedence of flag. Whatever's on the flag standard suspends contract. So when you fly the spear on top of the flag standard, it is the connotation for the theater of a war. That theater of war suspends contract as you try to navigate your concepts into the U.S. Supreme Court. When I walked into the U.S. Supreme Court, I told them I'm Chief Judge of the United States Supreme Court, Russell J. Gould. A gentleman behind the clerk jumped up and goes, Gould? I said, Russell J. Gould. He goes, don't say another word. He runs out. He comes back about 3 minutes later with 5 people, and he goes, Gould? I says, no, Russell J. Gould, Chief Judge. I says, I'm the judge with all the secrets to this place. They said, don't say another, please. They told the clerk what to punch up on the computer. They handed me a slip, and my case had been moved to the National Archives as a historical document because I'm an actual walking historical figure, because I'm the only guy in the history of planet Earth to take out a country's acting and sitting judicial system, as well as U.S. Supreme Court, and become Chief Judge of a country. So they take it very serious. Otherwise, my documents would not be in the National Archives. It is what it is.
That's pretty fabulous, Russell, because that suggests that there is full recognition then at the Supreme Court. But what does that recognition translate to? Does that nullify the Supreme Court? Can you set up your own Supreme Court?
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court itself is a foreign vessel in dry dock. Remember, all courthouses are foreign vessels in dry dock run through the Port Authority, through the Department of Transportation. As a foreign vessel, they have jurisdiction under a 12-mile radius, and that's it. Kind of like a foreign vessel at sea.
Right.
When it comes to your shoreline, there's a 12-mile radius. Well, the same holds true with all courthouses on planet Earth. Judges have jurisdiction for a 12-mile radius, and you can keep what you can hold, so they play the might makes right game versus we the citizens. And, of course, they have all the attorneys, which we call pettifoggers, engaged in games and tricks. You know, I'm not saying all attorneys are bad. Just all attorneys at certain levels are what we would call pretty slick. And so you got to watch that slickness. But if you've got the charisma to play in that at that level, well, that's a different gig. That's a different thing. And so the levels of honor amongst them, like I've been in court cases where I've been in the courtroom where I've taken the attorneys and stuck their nose in the corner, made them stand in the corner with their noses in the corner because they can't read and write. Right. So my world is much different than all of yours because I can authenticate through performances. So it's much different. But right now, worldwide, all court systems are closed because of the martial law. So what I mean by that is when you walk in the United Nations, and I've met with 82 countries at the United Nations, David and I, and we sat down with the head of the Postal Administration for the United Nations, who confessed to me that they didn't know how to read and write. They're running a scam, and the whole thing's a joke. That was coming from Robert Gray, the head of the United Nations Postal Administration in 2003. And he had a film crew down there, and they were all taking my pictures with him at one UN Plaza. He was shaking my hand, and he wanted my picture.
Wait a minute. Was he saying that the whole of the United Nations and what they do is a joke?
Well, yeah, they're at war with the people because they fly a spire on the flags inside and a boat and a ball on the outside. So it's an oxymoron. They're suckering you to come in with the flag standards out front. But when you walk into the embassies, they got spears on top of the flag standards, which suspends the country's flag. It's a theater of a war. And you're in a big psyop.
Are we all in a big psyop with COVID-19 currently as well? And martial law?
Well, you're definitely in a martial law theater, no doubt about it. And unfortunately, this is a scenario where those who are playing the games with that are really excited. Do you realize how many people just walked into their homes willingly?
I know, this is so shocking. It's really shocking.
The psyop and the psychological effects of stand in line and put your finger on your knee, as Simon says,
put a mask over your mouth.
Put the mask over your mouth. It's actually happening, for real. Now, there are many studies out there, and I haven't had the time because I've been working on the finances of the world. But make no wrong about it, very shortly I'll be done doing that, and I'll put my focus elsewhere in the lab. Count on it. So when I do that, then we'll be looking at the effects of. And I just spoke 2 days ago with one of the head electricians for the U.S. military. I can't say which base, and they came out and confessed to me that the 5G could be a problem.
Well, I think, I've been also exploring this somewhat, as many other journalists have been as well, and it appears that 5G it appears from everything I can tell, it's 5G that is creating this issue, with creating the deaths, creating the lack of oxygen in the bloodstream and things like that. It was rolled out in all of the places where the massive numbers of deaths are. So that's one thing, and then the other is there's some kind of bioengineered glycoproteins, etc., in the coronavirus with I think Fauci and Birx, the two faces that we see, them being involved in this, according to what Anna von Reitz has published recently. So there's a lot of things to explore and make known, I think, right?
There's much closure that should have been given before we put this stuff up. There should have been a much more full closure given to the people, and because like I said, the first studies of this type of technology were in 1875. How far do you think they came? A long ways, right? We've come a long.
Your audio is being massively interfered with currently, so I'd advise anybody who's doing this hacking, please get off our line. I'm sorry too. It's awful. The audio is really broken down at this point. Um, Somebody is literally sort of voice boxing you, so your voice is being kind of electronically delivered.
I'm a pretty monitored person.
Yeah, me too. So this is outrageous. So in any case, this is, just useful information for the people. So whoever is on this line, we're asking you to stand down and simply let us continue and complete our conversation, and for the good of everybody.
We're not trying to scare society. We're trying to give them full closure and making them cognition so that they can make choices for their loved ones. And those that are blocking this call should really think about their loved ones because they're affected as well.
I'm so sorry. Again, they've done it to your voice again. It's just awful. I suppose we should be glad that we were able to record, 30 minutes of conversation without this happening. Unbelievable. Because, I was going to ask you about solutions and what people can do, and you'd mentioned countries coming forward. What can people do? How can people approach you? What is the way to get this show on the road and move things forward so that we all break away from, the evil constructs and move toward open, accountable grammar and banking and judicial system contracts that work for all of us?
Sure, you can go to contact me. I'm kind of difficult to get a hold of, but I can be reached at quantum hyphen world, quantum hyphen bank dot world. Sorry, quantum hyphen bank dot world is where people can reach me. I do my best to correspond back with the emails that I get, but I am quite busy right now. I've made tremendous finds in the metallurgy world to help the finances of the world. It's really sad to say, and I'm joyous to say that there is no poverty. There's copious amounts of wealth for all of us. I'm sad to say that there are very few that are blocking my capacity to give it to the world.
Well, that has to change. I think there are people all around the world who would be so eager to move away from the current system of exploitation, suppression, and subjugation, and martial law, which we're currently facing, right? And move to a space where we can have. I'm sorry, I think you just went upside down. And move to a space where we can have reality again that works for everybody.
Well, it's a tough road to haul because there's so many bad people in position that have got away with things for so long. And society has not had the chance to sit down and breathe and take a look around and see what's real and what's factual and what's not. And then we are being constantly bombarded by the social engineering that we're dealing with out here. And it creates all that animosity, it creates all that vanity. There's nothing wrong with wealth. If you're wealthy, by all means, the quantum banking system is just a way to park your equities and you can keep your equities. But it brings a sense of fairness that if you take those equities and you contract to someone that does not have as much, it creates a level playing field that you have to perform for the people that you're doing business with.
Yes.
So this is about performance.
This is about performance, yes. You know, Russell, I'm afraid, given the horrific audio that we are currently facing, we're going to have to wrap up this conversation for now. I would be delighted if you could come back on again. I mean, they've kind of done this to us. But I would be delighted to have you on again to do part two of this conversation, to talk about perhaps more definitively how people can approach you and what you could possibly do for them. I understand you say you're very busy, but perhaps is there something people can do to help themselves? You know, what are the ways, solutions, remedies here? What are the best ways to go forward, etc.? So we can talk about that at length another time, perhaps. If you want to just give a gist and we can close that today, that would be great.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you and your audience, number one, for caring, being cognizant that there are major concerns out here that affect all of us, and for giving me a chance to give you a little bit of closure about how quantum grammar effects can create consequences in our lives, in your lives, and how we conduct contracts. So I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like to thank your audience for their learning about the quantum grammar. I'd like to warn them to be careful because there's a lot of people out there making really bizarre claims when you look at the corporate construct that are not involved in that. So just be cautious out there and please, try to get along with your neighbors before you go to war. Before any country decides to go to war again, please bring me to the battle line, please, so I can help you guys all communicate, get along, and set the terms needed in a way that will create affinity forever so that there will be no wars amongst us.
Wonderful. That's a fabulous note to end on. So countries can know that they can come to you if there's any kind of dispute or conflict, because you can help, stop them from going to war. So that's absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much, Russell, for your time. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And hopefully we'll pick up this conversation and see you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.